Hello there, wanderer of the past. Welcome to another slow, sleepy journey into the dustiest corners of history, the kind of history best enjoyed under a blanket. With eyes half shut, drifting softly towards slumber, tonight's tale takes you to a town you've never seen on a map, but one that might feel oddly familiar. Cobblestones that echo under your boots, windows shuttered tight. The distant groan of wooden carts and something else in the air, something faintly metallic. Something wrong. This is a town caught in the early days of the plague. And you've just arrived, but don't worry, you won't be rushing off to your doom. We're here to take it slow, to breathe it in, to survive. If we can, before we dive in, gently press the like button, not out of duty, but as a small blessing. Against medieval misfortune, and if you're watching this from somewhere in the world, whether a candlelit corner of Prague or a quiet room in Karachi, do let me know your location and the time down in the comments. I promise the rats won't read them. Now then, take a breath, pull your cloak tighter. Let's ease into tonight's journey. The bells begin tolling just before dawn. Not a church bell calling for prayer, but something heavier, slower, less hopeful. You arrive on the edge of town just as the sound reaches its third note. The fog hasn't lifted yet, and the sky is painted in the kind of gray that promises neither sun nor storm. It's just that stale middle ground that medieval skies often offered. The road is still slick from last night's rain, and your boots squelch faintly as you walk. No one greets you at the gate. In fact, the gate is open, unattended, creaking lazily in the breeze. That should be your first clue. Towns like this, one nestled between farmlands and forest paths, usually guard their entrances more closely. There should be a man with a spear, half asleep, grumbling about tolls. But not today. You step through. The town is quiet. Too quiet. Not the peaceful silence of dawn chores and distant roosters. No, this is a silence that's watching you. Curtains are drawn. A dog lies curled in a doorway but doesn't raise its head. Somewhere a crow squawks, landing on a thatched roof like a bad omen drawn by instinct. You glance left and right. Stone homes, timber frames, crooked windows. The air smells of damp wood, boiled cabbage, and under it all, something faintly sour, like spoiled vinegar, or rotting apples. You are here for work. Maybe a scribe, a merchant, or just another traveler with a promise tucked in your satchel and too many miles behind you. But now you realize something's wrong. A woman scurries across the alley ahead of you, clutching something wrapped in cloth. She doesn't look up. Her bonnet is stained. Her shoes flap against the mud. She disappears into a side door. That cloth bundle. Best not to ask. You finally spot a sign hanging from rusted iron. The Ox and Hound Inn swaying gently. The only place that seems awake. You push the door open. Inside it's warm. Not cozy exactly, but warm. A fire burns low.
And the innkeeper
Looks up at you with a mixture of surprise and pity. He doesn't speak at first. Another one passing through.
Ow.
He finally says, "Haven't had many lately." You nod, uncertain. He gestures toward a bench. "Sit if you like. Drink something hot. Just keep to yourself." "Aye." On the wall behind him, a tattered parchment is nailed to the wood, a drawing of a man covered in strange blotches. A crude warning. Beware the pestilence. It spreads by breath and sin. You exhale slowly. So it's true. The plague has arrived here. You sip the spiced ale he pours. It tastes of cloves and fear. There's no music, no laughter, just the pop of the fire and a man in the corner sharpening a knife for no reason you care to guess. Near the hearth, even it looks on edge. But here's where your story begins. You're not going to run. You're going to learn how to live here in the shadow of death, in the hush of something ancient and cruel in this town, where every cough carries consequence, and every superstition might be a shield. Because medieval people didn't just perish from plague, they survived it. They bled onions, wore beaked masks, painted charms, chewed roots, burned herbs, and prayed to saints whose names were half-dashed forgotten, and so will you. Welcome to the year of pestilence. Welcome to the medieval town that time forgot. Welcome to your next 4 hours of historical sleepiness. Oh, and one final warning. You probably won't make it through this day. The morning air grows heavier by the minute. Inside the inn, the fire crackles as if trying to fill the space left by absent voices. You sit on a bench worn smooth by years of elbows, cloaks, and spilled stew. The mug in your hand is warm, but your fingers still tremble slightly, perhaps from the chill. Perhaps from the silence that thickens the air like wool soaked in rain. Your ears adjust slowly. You begin to notice little sounds, the distant creak of beams overhead, the soft rustle of straw in the eaves, the occasional clink of pewter from behind the bar. And beneath it all, a faint, irregular shuffling. Not quite footsteps. Too light. Too scratchy, it's coming from under the floorboards. You look down, the floor is a patchwork of wood. Some planks warped and others darker with age or spilled drink. One of the boards near your feet shifts ever so slightly with a tiny creak. And there, briefly, is a sound you know too well from old barns and storerooms, a short squeak. A scratch, and the echo of tiny claws scurrying through dust. A rat, or perhaps maybe the innkeeper sees your gaze and offers a tired shrug. They say they know when it's coming, he mutters. They leave the ships and run to shore days before the sailors even start coughing. Nasty little prophets, they are. You glance again at the wall of the parchment with the sickly man, his body a constellation of boils. The pestilence hears. Your first true lesson in medieval survival. Rats don't just eat grain, they carry ghosts. Not literally, of course. But close enough. The people of this town believe they carry the sickness itself, along with fleas, curses, and the souls of the unburied. No one has seen a flea under a microscope. No one has drawn bacteria, but they've watched their friends die days after finding rat droppings near the hearth. Is it true? Historians still debate whether the rats themselves caused the outbreaks, or if it was the fleas who hitched a ride on them like cursed couriers. But in the Middle Ages, explanation was a luxury. Survival? That was daily work. The innkeeper shuffles back behind the counter. You'll want to find clean straw if you're staying the night, he says. The usual room's above the kitchen. Heat rises and, well, it's quiet up there. Quiet. Always with the quiet. You nod. He nods. Nothing more is said. That's how conversation works in times like these. You climb the creaky stairs slowly, one hand tracing the railing. The wood is smooth in some places, splintered in others. Someone's name is carved in Latin on the newel post of students. Hand or aboard travelers. You run your thumb across the letters as you pass. The hallway above is narrow and dark. One candle flickers in a niche, its wax pooling into a shallow clay dish. Shadows shift gently on the walls as if they're sighing. Your room is small, just a bed of straw, a chipped basin, and a stool. A little round window gives you a view. Of the market square, though the shutters are closed now, you open them a crack. Outside, town is beginning to stir. A woman hangs linens on a line strung between two crooked buildings. A man pushes a cart piled with firewood. A boy tosses stones into a puddle, perhaps pretending they're ships in a storm. Life continues, stubbornly like moss on a gravestone. But there's still a strange tension. You notice it now. People keep their distance. They speak quietly. No laughter rings out. Even the children seem muffled. You catch a glimpse of someone in a long dark robe, wearing a hood that conceals most of their face. They carry a bundle wrapped in cloth, holding it far from their body. They disappear around the corner, down below, just outside the inn's front door. Someone has drawn a strange symbol in chalk. A circle, a cross, a pair of dots. You're not sure what it means? Protective charm? Warning sign? Medieval graffiti? A knock comes at the door frame. It's the innkeeper again, holding a clay jug. Water, he says. Best boiled. From the... Well, outside the chapel, you thank him, and he nods again. Still no smile. The innkeeper has likely given out dozens of these jugs in the past weeks. Not everyone who received one is still alive. Once he leaves, you pour a little water into the basin and splash your face. It's cold, sharp, a jolt to the senses. You breathe in deeply and sit on the stool, somewhere beneath your feet. The scratching begins again. The rat is still there. Tiny claws. Tiny warnings. In towns like these, rats are not just pests. Omens, symbols, and in their own way, survivors too. Find the cracks. The warmth. The food. You watch the corner of the room, half expecting to see one poke its head through. A knothole in the wall, but none appear. Only the flickering shadow of the candle on the uneven timber. You close your eyes and imagine you are back on the road, walking past empty fields and crooked fences, with wind brushing your cloak and the horizon stretching flat and endless. That world feels cleaner, less dangerous, less watched. But you are here now, and so begins your slow, cautious life in a town where the plague whispers beneath floorboards, seeps through stone, and waits in silence. Your survival will depend on. More than luck, it will depend on knowledge, on patterns, on watching what others do and what they avoid. Tomorrow, you'll visit the market, and you'll learn which vegetables are safe to buy, which herbs people are hoarding, which have stopped, and who's left offerings on the chapel steps. But for now, you rest. The fire downstairs fades, the rat quiets, and night settles in again. The morning sun filters in faintly through the tiny, crooked window. The light is pale and watery, the kind that feels like it's trying its best but isn't quite up to the task. You stretch slowly, feeling the straw shift underneath you. There's a smell, not unpleasant, but definitely earthy, rising from the rushes scattered across. The wooden floor. Someone downstairs sneezes. Loudly, you freeze. It's not a dramatic sneeze. Not the theatrical kind that demands a bless you or applause. No, it's the kind that's real, wet, tired. Final in a town like this. Sneeze is not a seasonal inconvenience. It is a warning shot. You rise. Your boots are stiff with dried mud from yesterday, but you manage to pull them on. They were once nice, perhaps even imported. Now, they're just vessels for superstition. Because today, like every day now, you reach into your satchel and retrieve a clove of garlic. With the reverence of a holy relic, you slice it in half and press each piece into the toe of your boot. Not for the scent, not for the comfort, but for protection? Yes. Garlic in the shoes, a local favorite in this town and many others during plague season. Why? Well, it was believed garlic had properties beyond the kitchen, that its strong scent could ward off the bad air or miasma, thought to carry the plague from one unlucky soul to the next. Some even chewed cloves like candy. Others rubbed it under their arms or wore necklaces made of it. Did it work? No one really knows. Historians still debate whether the belief in garlic was purely symbolic or rooted in real observations of its mild antibacterial properties. But right now, you don't care about science. You just care about not dying. You descend the stairs. The inn is mostly empty now. The fire has burned down to glowing embers. The innkeeper isn't in sight, but a bowl of thin porridge waits on the table, still warm. You take it as a peace offering. Outside, the town is waking up in cautious shuffles. A baker opens his shutters. The heat from the oven pours out, mingling with the morning chill. He doesn't smile at you, but he nods, and you return the gesture. Bread is life here and comfort. The townspeople have even started sprinkling ashes on their doorsteps. Why? Because someone said ashes confuse demons or rats, or both. The origins of the custom are lost, but now it's habit. Every home with a sick resident carries a faint gray outline like an eerie frame around their door. You pass a house with 2 such ash lines. A small pile of dried rosemary lies atop the doorstep. Protection, or mourning, farther down the road. A man in a priest's robe walks slowly, trailing incense from a swinging censer. It leaves a thin line of smoke behind him, sweet, herbal, and mildly nauseating. He mutters something in Latin with each step. Can't catch the words, but you recognize the rhythm of them. A woman follows close behind, tossing flower petals into doorways. Another protective measure, dried marigold mostly, bright against the dust. You've entered the realm of plague folk magic. This is where desperation meets routine. Each person you pass carries a small token, a carved charm, a pouch of herbs, a twisted ribbon. A man you see wears a small mirror tied around his neck, facing outward. The idea? That the plague would see its own reflection and be frightened away. Sure, why not near the market square? Vendor opens a stall selling of all things onions. Cut one in half and place it in your windowsill. He says to no one in particular, "It draws the sickness from the air, turns black by morning." Means it worked. He believes it. Or maybe he just wants to believe it, and so do you. Because belief is armor here. It's not steel, but ritual. You pause by the old chapel. The doors are open, but the benches inside are mostly empty. One man kneels near the altar, head bowed low. A child sits cross-legged near the back, playing quietly with a doll made of corn husks. A priest in brown robes lights another candle. Near the wall, you recognize the strange chalk symbol drawn beside the threshold, the same as the one you saw outside the inn. It's all around the town, now that you're looking for it. It's not official. It's not in any holy book. But it's there. A quiet reminder that sometimes symbols speak louder than sermons. As you walk back toward the main road, you notice a door swing open abruptly. A man steps out, pale and sweating, clutching his stomach. His eyes meet yours for just a moment. Then he falls. Two others rush from the house and drag him back inside before anyone else can react. The door slams and is bolted. You stop. So does everyone else nearby. No one speaks. Then slowly, people resume their movements. A child starts humming again. A broom swishes on a doorstep. The priest keeps muttering Latin, because in this town, death is a neighbor. You don't greet it. You just nod politely and carry on, and so you do. Back at the inn, you wash your hands twice with cold well water and a pinch of vinegar. You scrub the garlic from your soles, hang a sprig of thyme near your window. You mutter a short prayer. Maybe it's one you learned as a child. Maybe you make it up on the spot. No one's keeping score anymore. As the sun fades behind the chimneys, you stare at the wall across from your bed. The rat is still there, beneath the floorboards. Still scratching, still surviving, just like you. Morning returns, not with fanfare, but with the faint, wheezy clatter of a cart somewhere beyond the shutters. You rise, stretch, and sit quietly on the straw bed, listening again to the familiar scratching beneath the floor. You no longer flinch. You expect it now. You lace your boots garlic freshly stuffed into the toes and glance at the water jug. It's nearly empty. Time to visit the well. Outside, the air is heavy with moisture. The sky hangs low, and you can smell the soot of nearby chimneys lingering on the wind. Smoke, dampness, and the scent of sour bread from someone's hurried breakfast. It's a cocktail no apothecary would dare bottle. The well is in the square, nestled like a weary uncle between the chapel and the merchant stalls. It's an old thing, lined with moss-licked stones and topped with a creaking wooden roof that leans more to the left each year. You step toward it, jug in hand, but stop just short. There's a small line. People waiting, but they're not waiting. In the usual way, not close together, not chatting, no one speaks. Each person stands at least a stride apart. Some wear cloths over their mouths. Others stare straight ahead, not daring to meet eyes. Their faces are drawn tight. Not angry, just locked. You take your place at the end of the line, eh? Boy 2 spots ahead of you fidgets with a small wax charm hanging from a string. His mother swats his hand gently, then looks back at you. Her eyes say more than words ever. Don't cough, don't speak, don't move too close. The man at the front lowers his bucket slowly, the rope groaning. The splash below is faint. When he pulls it up again, he pours carefully into his jug and steps away, not waiting for. Thanks, not offering any greeting. You advance with the line. When it's your turn, the bucket comes up damp and cool. The water is clear, but barely. A few pale flecks drift near the top. Ash pollen? It's best not to think too hard. You pour it into your jug, cork it, and move aside. At the edge of the square, near a crumbling wall, a few older women have gathered. Their shawls pulled tight, their mouths moving fast, and their voices a whispery buzz, like bees trapped under fabric. You can't help but inch closer. They say she boiled her laundry in lye and rosemary and still got the marks. One says, of course she did. She buried her cat 2 days before. That's what brought it. They found 7 birds dead outside her window. Sign. I heard that Tanner's boy survived by drinking ale only, not a drop of water in a fortnight. You've entered the realm of well-side wisdom, equal parts folklore, desperation, and pure invention. They speak with confidence, but none of them agree, which means, of course, they're all probably wrong. Yet still, you listen. In the medieval world, the well isn't just where you gather water. It's where you gather information. Gossip flows faster than fresh water ever could. And in a time of plague, whispers can feel like lifelines. Did you know? Some people say bathing too often weakens the body. Opening your windows at night lets death in. That tying a string soaked in goat's milk around your neck can keep the boils away. None of it is written down. But everyone has a cousin or a neighbor or an uncle who swears by it. You thank the women with a soft nod and head down a narrow alley, away from the square. This part of town smells stronger, fish mostly, and something sour. A cooper's shop is shuttered tight, its usual barrel display gone. Someone's painted an X on the door in red. You don't know what kind of red? You don't want to know? You pass a wall where someone's drawn more symbols in chalk. Circles and spirals. Letters that aren't from any language you know. Protection, maybe, or a warning, or someone's final attempt to be remembered. A child peeks out from behind a doorway, watching you. His hands are dirty, but his eyes are sharp. He doesn't smile, just watches. You wave. He disappears. Your feet carry you back toward the chapel, half by instinct now. Its doors are still open, though fewer people are inside. You notice something new today? A board posted near the entrance. It's covered in parchment slips names written in uneven hands. Some names are crossed out, others are fading. One corner is completely soaked through, the ink smudged into illegibility. You add your name? Why not? It feels like the right thing to do. Back in your room, you uncork the jug and take a small sip. The water tastes faintly of iron and moss, but it's wet. That's enough. You sit near the window, staring out at the rooftops, and once again, you think, survival is more than not dying. It's observing, it's adapting, it's knowing when to speak and when to listen. And sometimes, it's simply knowing when to move a little farther down the well line. It starts with a missing smell. You wake to the usual chorus. Birds that sound like they smoke too much. Someone coughing in the next room and the low thud of footsteps across the street. But there's one thing missing. The thick, unmistakable scent of brine-soaked meat from the butcher's stall. You don't realize it at first. It's like noticing silence. Something's off, but you can't put your finger on it until you try. You throw on your cloak and boots. The garlic in your shoes is shriveled, but still pungent. Maybe it's working. You step outside and the air is emptier. There's no chopping, no shouting, no bones cracking, no butcher. You walk down to the marketplace, and sure enough, his stall is closed. The table where raw cuts would usually sit is empty, save for a single iron hook. Swinging slowly like it's trying to remember the rhythm of work. Someone scrawled a crude circle in ash on the butcher's shutter. A mark of absence. You glance around. The woman who sells turnips is there, half-heartedly laying out her wares. She sees you looking and shakes her head before you can even ask. Gone, she mouths. Since yesterday, gone. In a medieval town, gone rarely means vacation. Gone means carted off in the night. Gone means the cough got louder, and then the house got quiet. Gone means someone came to paint the door, and now no one goes near it. You wander back toward the alley behind the butcher shop. The back door is ajar. You shouldn't. You do. Inside, it's dim. The salt barrel has been knocked over and something sticky coats the floor. But not blood. Not exactly. Just stew. Like a forgotten broth. The tools are all in their places. Cleavers, hooks, saw, neat, like they were just used. But nothing is fresh. There's no sign of the butcher. No note. No body. Just absence. A strange silence, as though the walls know and refuse to speak of it. You back out slowly and return to the street. A woman you recognize, Marjorie, the baker's sister, stands nearby. She's rubbing a small stone between her palms. "Did you see him?" you ask. She shakes her head. Only heard. What? His door opened, then slammed, then hooves. Horse. She shrugs. Maybe not. She walks off, leaving. The stone behind on a barrel. You pick it up. It's smooth. Warm from her hands. Just a rock, really. But someone carved a tiny spiral on one side. Another charm. Another story. You pocket it at the edge of the square. A priest is arguing with a woman over herbs. She said marjoram. The woman insists, not rosemary. Both are sacred, the priest mutters. You walk past them and toward the apothecary inside. The air stings your nose with vinegar and crushed thyme. The apothecary is a bent man with a voice like parchment. He doesn't greet you. He just gestures to the counter. There's a new display today. Plague poultices, wormwood and mud, 1 penny. You raise an eyebrow, he notices. Don't laugh. He croaks. I sold 3 yesterday. What do they do? Nothing. But they do something. That is, perhaps the most honest answer you've heard in weeks. You buy one, it smells awful. But it's warm, soft, almost comforting. Back outside, the clouds hang heavy, as if waiting for a cue to fall. But the rain doesn't come. Just the cold. You make your way past the shoemaker's shop. Still closed, hasn't opened in days. Someone's drawn a red triangle on the door. That's new. A boy with a wooden sword runs past, pretending to slay invisible beasts. You envy his confidence, because the real monsters don't roar or charge, they knock quietly. And take your neighbor's while. You're sleeping. You return to the inn as you cross the threshold. You catch sight of a new item by the hearth, a pair of boots, large, sturdy, and familiar. The butcher's boots, but they're dry, dubbed clean. To clean, you glance at the innkeeper. She doesn't look up. Maybe she doesn't know, or maybe she knows. Too much. You climb the stairs, clutching your poultice like a relic. You wedge it under your mattress like a secret. And that night, as you lie still, you dream of doors creaking open in the dark, of footsteps that don't echo, of boots left behind, empty but polished. And in your dream, someone whispers, "The butcher wasn't taken. He walked." You wake to the scratching beneath the floor, and you listen, because the town is changing.
Slowly, subtly.
And the plague isn't always what it seems. Morning again, or something pretending to be morning. The sky looks more like wet wool than sunrise. Thick fog curls low along the streets, muffling the sounds you've come to expect: boots, birds, maybe the creak of a cart. But today, the air is too still. You stand by the window. It's waiting for a sound that never comes. The chapel bell, supposed to toll at first light. One long, low note, signal to the town. You've made it through the night so far. But this morning, it stays silent. You step outside, half expecting the clang to finally echo across the rooftops. But it doesn't. The street is quieter than usual. More doors are shut, windows shuttered tight. The scent of last night's fires clings to everything: wood smoke and wax and something sharper, almost like burnt vinegar. From somewhere nearby, a chicken squawks and is immediately silenced. You make your way toward the chapel, past the blacksmith's house. The door is painted now, a faded yellow cross just below the lintel. You pause, but you don't knock. No one would answer anyway. You pass the well. Someone's tied a bunch of dried herbs, yarrow and angelica, maybe to the crank. A quiet offering to something that probably isn't listening. The chapel looms ahead. Squat stone structure, with ivy clawing up its sides and pigeons nesting. In the rafters, the door is cracked open. You step inside. It smells like dust and old books. The priest is there, seated near the altar. His robe is undone at the collar. His eyes, normally sharp as flint, are watery and red-rimmed. He doesn't greet you, just says it's stuck. You blink. The bell, he clarifies, won't move. The rope snapped last night. Glance up toward the belfry. A rope dangles like a forgotten ribbon, frayed at the end. Wind? You ask. No wind, he says. There's something fragile in his voice, crack running just beneath the surface. He looks like a man who's been shouting in silence for too long. Maybe it's a sign, he mutters. Maybe we're not supposed to announce anymore. You don't press him. Just sit in one of the pews and listen to the stillness. Even the pigeons are silent. There's a body in the back of the chapel, covered in a pale linen cloth. A few candles flicker nearby, their flames reluctant in the damp air. Someone's left a small bowl of dried fruit beside it, at an offering, or a farewell. You don't recognize the feet sticking out from beneath the cloth, but the boots look worn. It's cobbler's work. Solid. Ordinary. The priest finally speaks again. 3 in 2 days. No one wants to ring it anymore, you nod. In truth, the bell has changed meaning. It used to mark weddings, births, holy days now. Every toll is a death knell. Every ring a reminder of who didn't make it. Maybe silence is mercy. You stand to leave as you exit the chapel. You glance once more at the belfry. The pigeons stir now. One flutters down and lands near your feet. It eyes you, head tilted, then coos low and lifts off again. A puff of feathers falls like ash in its wake. Back on the street, you see a group of children playing with sticks and stones. They're drawing symbols in the mud. Circles, crosses, a spiral. They're arguing over which keeps the plague away. Best, one of them says, "My father said the bell broke 'cause the dead want quiet." Another snorts. "My mother says the priest broke it himself, so he wouldn't have to announce the bodies." You keep walking. You don't interrupt. Their logic, though strange, feels strangely sound at the end. Someone's left a basket of apples at the door. No note, just fruit. And a ribbon of blue cloth tied around the handle. You don't touch it. Gifts left without. Names tend to come with stories you'd rather not hear. Upstairs, you find your room cooler than before. Hearth is out. You light it carefully. The spark catching only after the third try, you stare into the tiny fire and listen again for the bell. Still nothing in its absence. Your ears pick up other things. The rustle of dried herbs hung in the rafters. The whisper of wind through the cracks in the shutters. The soft shifting of something behind the walls. You wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The silence isn't peaceful, it's waiting, like the whole town is holding its breath. And somewhere, deep in the bones of the chapel, the bell waits. 2 not broken, maybe just tired, like all of you. There are few rules in this town now. One of them, never smell like death. It's not just about comfort, it's survival. In a place where breath is short and fevers bloom like mold in summer, scent becomes signal. A warning, a ward. A disguise this morning, before your boots even. Touch the floor, you reach for the satchel of dried herbs beneath your cot. A mix of sage, rosemary, and lavender, not because they're particularly effective, but because they don't smell like illness. You tuck a bundle into the fold of your collar and tie another to your wrists with a leather strap. It feels ceremonial in a way.
Right.
Like armor. Invisible, fragrant armor, downstairs. The innkeeper is already steeping her infamous plague tea, a foul mixture of garlic, vinegar, and what might be old onion skins. It smells like someone boiled a regret. She sees you and grunts. Drink. It or don't. It's brewed anyway, you drink it.
Oh.
Of course you do, because it's better to smell like soup than to be soup. The town has turned into a living potpourri. Walk through the market, and you'll find bundles of herbs swinging from every stall, dried mint in the baker's window, crushed cloves in a child's pocket, and a particularly stubborn man wearing a necklace of pickled garlic. You pass a man, whose beard is slicked with rose oil. He nods at you solemnly. Like a fellow soldier in the War of Aroma, you nod back. This strange culture of scent has created something of a hierarchy. Sweet-smelling folk are assumed to be healthier. Sprig of thyme tucked behind your ear says, "I'm surviving, thank you very much." But if someone catches a whiff of rot, you're not just avoided, you're marked. It's not unheard of for someone to be chased from the square for smelling off. Even if it's just bad cheese in their cloak, you visit the apothecary again. He offers you a new item today, the plague cone. It's a waxy pouch filled with camphor, pressed into the shape of a small horn. You're meant to hang it around your neck and sniff it when the air feels too thick with fear. Do they work? You ask. No, he replies. But they make people think you're too fragrant to die. There's some logic in that. Death had a nose. Perhaps it would turn away from lavender. You buy two. Outside, the sky is cleared just enough to let in a sallow golden light, not warm. Just polite. It's the kind of sunshine that peeks in and then quickly excuses itself. A woman kneels in the dirt, burning a bundle of juniper. Smoke curls around her as she chants something that sounds both sacred and annoyed. She doesn't acknowledge you. But her dog does a skinny mutt with one eye and the calm patience of someone who's seen far too many apocalypses. You give the dog a scratch behind the ear. It doesn't flinch. Maybe it trusts your smell. There's a rumor going around now that people who smell sweet are immune. That rosemary in the right place might stop the Black Death in its tracks. That anise tucked into your boot makes you invisible to the spirits who carry the sickness. Historians still debate whether these aromatic rituals had any effect at all, though most agree it was less about herbs and more about hope. And in truth, you don't care, because hope smells like lavender. But right now your world reeks of desperation. You pass by the town gates, where a group of men are laying tar along the bottom seam, sealing the town in or out. No one's sure which direction safety lies anymore. One of them is chewing cloves, spitting them between planks like curses. Back at the inn, you find someone has replaced your linens with fresh ones sprinkled and dried. Chamomile, a kindness, or perhaps a warning. It's hard to tell. You lie down and breathe in deeply, sage. Garlic, the faintest trace of something. Floral, you've done all you can. Masked yourself in sweetness. Burned herbs, drank teas, voided. The smell of sweat, blood, and fear. You smell alive. But as the evening deepens, the breeze carries something else through the open. Window something faint, like iron, like illness. You sit up and reach for another pouch. Because in this town, it's the only thing standing between you and the grave. It's how well you can hide the scent of dying. You know the one? Tucked behind the apothecary, past the broken cart with one wheel, and the cat that never blinks. It's barely an alley, really more of a suggestion. Two stone walls that lean too close together like they're gossiping. Between them, a footpath paved in filth, shadow, and a long history of people pretending it doesn't exist. You stand at the mouth of it now. The smell hits first. Not foul exactly, just forgotten. Damp straw, old fruit, rainwater that's lingered. Too long in a crack, a ghost of vinegar. Be something that once resembled meat. It's hard to place. It smells like neglect. Which is to say, it smells like most of the town these days. You walk in anyway, because you heard something this morning, overheard it really. The midwife's assistant muttering to the butcher about a green light behind the alley. Number. One asks questions. No one ever does. When something strange happens around here. Curiosity is like a rash now, unattractive and contagious. So now you're here, and the alley doesn't disappoint. The light, as faint as it is real. It pulses faintly near the far end, like someone tried to catch the moon in a bottle and forgot. To screw the lid on, you approach slowly, boots soft on wet stones. It's quiet, and here quieter than usual. You'd expect rats, or at least the buzzing of something with wings. But it's as if the world stepped out for a moment, and then something rustles. Not behind you, not above, beneath. You glance down, and see a pile of dried herbs. Someone's been laying sprigs of rue and pennyroyal beneath the cracks between the stones. Not tossed, arranged, careful, symmetrical patterns, circles, triangles, a line that points toward the flickering green. Now, no one's going to admit to witchcraft, not in this town, but a healthy amount of folk magic has bled into daily life, especially now, when the churches are full of more bodies than prayers. This alley, turns out, isn't abandoned. It's prepared. You crouch and inspect one of the bundles. It's bound with red thread, fresh, even now. Someone was here recently then. You see the wall, Someone's etched symbols into the stone delicate, winding marks like vines or runes. Some resemble letters you've seen in old books. Others seem older, as if the wall remembered something from long ago and decided to speak. You reach out to touch them, but hesitate. Your fingers hover an inch away, caught in that strange moment between bravery and good sense, and that's when you hear it. A bell. Not the chapel bell. Not quite. This one is thinner, fainter. Like it's ringing inside your chest. Doesn't clang, it hums. Long and low. Like the sound a wine glass makes when you run a wet finger around the rim. You blink. The green light flutters, then fades. The air shifts. Warmer now, and then it's just an alley again. Damp, quiet, forgotten. You stand, brush the dirt from your hands, and begin to retrace your steps. But as you exit the alley, something catches your eye. A feather, jet black. Longer than your hand, stuck in the crack of the alley's edge. Clean, almost polished. Ravens, maybe. But none live in this part of town. You pocket it, just in case it means something. Historically speaking, alleys have always been more than shortcuts. In ancient Rome, they were escape routes during riots. In medieval towns, they were spaces where waste was dumped, prayers whispered. Some were cursed, others were sacred, and some were both. Historians still debate whether back alleys held any real spiritual purpose, or if they were just where secrets like to settle. This one feels like it's waiting for more. You emerge back into the main square. The butcher's hanging meat from a fresh rack. The midwife's assistant avoids your eye. And somewhere overhead, the clouds are rolling in again. Rain's coming. You walk past the alley. Once more, without looking back, whatever lives there, ghost, god, or forgotten fever, isn't interested in being thanked, only remembered its market, Daydod, or something loosely pretending to be one. The square hums with low voices and cautious footsteps. Stalls are fewer now, spaced wide like suspicious neighbors. Cloth awnings flap gently in the breeze, faded reds, washed out greens, the occasional patch made from what looks like a repurposed funeral shroud. Merchants speak softly, buyers speak less. You step into the square, greeted by the mingling smells of wet wool, overripe pears, and dried marjoram. A horse sneezes nearby. No one reacts. It's safer not to show alarm these days. People have started interpreting facial expressions like omens. The first stall you pass belongs to the charm seller. She's an older woman with fingers like twisted, roots and eyes like candle smoke. Her table is covered in trinkets, tiny carved figures, scraps of parchment scrawled with protective words, twine dolls, and polished stones the color of dried blood. For luck, she says, holding up a small pouch tied with a crow's feather. Kind of luck, you ask? She shrugs. The not dying kind? You buy it. Obviously not because you believe it will work, because everyone else does. In a town held together by superstition and stale bread, belief is its own kind of armor. Next stall, the spice merchant. He's selling bundles of cinnamon wrapped in cloth, clove-studded apples, and little pots of honey mixed with crushed mint. For health, he says, flavor, but mostly health. You nod politely. You're not here for flavor. At the center of the market stands an altar of sorts. Not religious, more ... desperate. People have left offerings coins, herbs, small wooden carvings of saints or strange horned beasts. Someone's laid a child's toy on the stones, a doll with one eye, but you don't ask why. You hear whispers as you pass. They say if you burn rosemary with your left hand, the sickness skips your house. I heard hanging garlic upside down makes it scream before it comes in. Saw a man who ate only white food for a week. He's still breathing. A museum of folk medicine and magical nonsense, and nobody's laughing. You pass a stall selling masks. Not the elegant kind worn at feasts, but crude cloth ones. Most are soaked in vinegar. A few are stuffed with herbs. One has a drawing of a skull on the front. You can't tell if it's meant to be humorous or prophetic. The man behind the stall doesn't speak. just stares at you from behind a black veil. You don't buy anything from him. At the bread stall, the baker gestures toward her loaves with a hesitant hand. Still fresh, she says, though the crusts say otherwise. You buy. 1. Out of politeness, or maybe just out of routine. That's the thing about this market. It's not about what you need. It's about pretending that the world still works, that bread still matters, that a charm tied to your wrist can keep your lungs clear and your nights undisturbed. You watch a boy, maybe 9 or 10, hand over a pouch of coins for a vial of something thick and red. Dragon's blood, the seller claims. Boiled under a full moon. You don't question it. Because what if it's true? Historians still debate the line between medieval medicine and magic. But the lines were blurred, often deliberately. When doctors failed, charms filled the space. When prayers faltered, people turned to powdered frog bones and whispered Latin from cracked pages. Back then, signs wore a mask too. You make one final stop at a stand that offers silence. No seller. Just a table with a note that reads, "Take what you need, leave what." You leave behind the clove-studded apple from earlier, and in return, you take a small wooden figure of a man curled into a sleeping pose. You don't know why, it just feels ... useful. Back at your lodgings, you spread your new items on the table. Charms, pouches, a loaf of dubious bread, a feather, a doll made of thistle stems, a market day's worth of fear dressed up as hope. Outside, the market begins to thin. Stalls close. Candles are snuffed. The square returns to its new, usual quiet. But the charm seller stays, still seated, still watching, as if she knows something you don't, or worse, as if she's waiting for something you've already forgotten. By this point, you've realized something. The loudest truths in town are whispered. And the most dangerous ones, well, they get washed away with the linens. You're standing now behind the town's communal wash house, a lopsided timber building that groans like an old woman whenever the wind shifts. Smoke curls from its squat chimney, carrying the scent of ash, damp linen, and rosemary boiled in gray water. It is not pleasant, but it is clean, which is about the highest praise anything can earn these days. The town's women gather here in uneasy clusters, washing clothes in shallow tubs, sleeves rolled, brows damp. Their chatter is quiet, not out of politeness, but strategy, because behind the steam, behind the baskets of soaked underthings and coarse cloth tunics, behind the illusion of ordinary toil secrets multiply like mold, you lean on the crooked. Wallen, listen. Heard the priest won't touch communion anymore. Says hands are unholy. Ellen. Says she saw the mayor's wife feed the rats. With her own fingers, swears it. The healer's taken to speaking in Latin backwards. Says it keeps the plague from finding him. These are not facts. Not exactly, but in a place where facts keep dying of fever. Rumors are the only things that breathe. You step around the back, where the runoff flows out into a ditch lined with rocks and dried herbs in attempt, perhaps to purify the filth. A few chickens pecked at the muddy ground, unbothered. A young girl is crouched nearby, fiddling with a necklace of beetles strung on thread. She does not speak. Someone else does. She comes at dusk. You turn. A woman older, with a face like cracked leather and eyes that do not blink nearly enough. She stands with a basket of wet laundry balanced on one hip, but she is not here to work. Not really. She waits there, the woman adds, gesturing toward the far wall where moss eats away at the stones. Every night, just after the last, pot's emptied. You ask who, she smiles, but only with her mouth, the one who listens. Well, that clears up absolutely nothing. But still, as night leans in and the wash house empties, you wait. Because when someone who's outlived for winters tells you something is coming, you believe them. The town is quieter here. Only the bubbling of the rinse water and the rhythmic swish of mop cloths. The women depart in 2s and 3s, cloaks, drawn tight, eyes darting like mice. Then you hear it, not footsteps, not breath, a voice, barely a whisper, as if spoken into a cupped hand from a great distance. Have you washed away the name? You freeze. The air feels like wool soaked in river water. It's thick, cold, unmoving. You step forward. The moss-covered wall waits, silent. Still, a single word has been scratched into the stone with something sharp. Voridus, Latin maybe? Or maybe just an idea that refused to die properly. You don't know what it means, but you say it aloud anyway. The whisper stops. The moss shivers. And then, it's nothing. Just the soft return of wind through wet grass and the distant clatter of someone. Dropping a pot, historians still debate whether communal washhouses were more social sanctuaries or surveillance centers. They were places where rumors ripened, sure, but also where plans were made, alliances formed, enemies quietly scrubbed from memory, magic, perhaps mistrust. Definitely, you return to your room with the scent of soap still clinging to your cloak. That word, Voridus, echoes in your skull. Like an itch you can't scratch. Maybe you should have left it alone. But curiosity, as always, is the only illness this town doesn't bother trying to cure. You pour yourself a cup of watered wine. Sit by the window. The moon slips behind a cloud like it's afraid to see what happens next. Outside, the wash house exhales steam into the night. Somewhere beneath it, something waits to be rinsed away. You've heard about him, everyone has. The man who once knew every herb in the forest, who used to crush dried roots between his fingers and tell whether the bark came from elm or elder. The man who, on better days, could look at your tongue and guess your sins, your diet, whether you were likely to make it to next week. You find him now at the edge of town. His cottage leans into a hill, half swallowed by ivy, half pretending to be a boulder. Smoke rises from a chimney held together by what looks like sheer optimism and old beeswax. You knock once on the crooked door and it opens before your knuckles meet wood. He's already there. His face is long and shadowed. Not old exactly, just ... misplaced. Like someone put youth down and forgot where it went. His eyes are wide, too wide, and filled with the kind of knowledge that doesn't sleep anymore. Sit, he says, though you haven't spoken, you do. Inside. The air is thick with rosemary ash and some unidentifiable root that smells vaguely of forgotten shoes. Dried herbs hang from the beams overhead, forming a jungle of shadows. Jars line the walls, some labeled, some scribbled over, some that seem to pulse slightly when you aren't looking directly at them. Tea, he asks, but pours it anyway. It's dark and bitter. You pretend it's good for you. So he says, do you want to live? Or just delay the opposite? You answer with the shrug of someone who's been dodging plague breath for weeks and would like to continue doing so. He nods, as if you've said something profound. From beneath the table, he pulls out a satchel made of stitched leaves. He opens it slowly, carefully, reverently. Inside are vials of powders, bones that might be birds or mice, and a folded piece of parchment tied with twine. He doesn't touch the parchment. Instead, he pulls out a black stone carved with 7 notches and places it on the table. This, he says, is not medicine. But it helps you pretend something is. You reach for it. He slaps your hand. Not yet. You're not sure if he's joking. He gestures to the shelf. Pick one, he says. One what? He doesn't answer. So, you wander, eyes scanning the jars. Some are filled with liquid, others with powder, few with what might be teeth, or seeds, or both. You stop at a jar labeled lungwort, maybe. Behind you, he chuckles. You won't find it that way, he mutters. You have to feel what's missing. You pretend that makes sense. When you return to your seat, he's lit a small bundle of something sweet and resinous. Smoke curls toward the ceiling like it's trying to draw a map. He leans close now. Too close. Tell me, he whispers. What? Color does your breath taste like when you're dreaming? You blink. He nods, satisfied. Ah, I thought so. You still haven't answered. Then he sits back and looks toward the fire. I used to have a name, he says suddenly. But then, the fever took it. You wait for him to laugh. He doesn't. I woke up one morning, he continues, and I was still me. But the name just gone, as if someone plucked it from my mouth while I slept, like a coin under a pillow. No pain, no fuss, just ... silence. He pours more tea. No, doesn't drink his. And since then, I've found things. Herbs I never learned. Spells I never studied. I hear songs in the walls. The mice whisper. The moths arrange themselves into letters. You're starting to think this tea may not have been optional. Historians still debate the exact role of healers in medieval towns. Some were trained in monasteries. Others just inherited knowledge from older hands. But some blurred the line between healer and heretic, between medicine and magic, between man and mystery. This one, you're not so sure is even trying to pick a side. He offers you a pouch. Keep it tied to your belt, he says. Left side, never right. Never open it near running water. And if it starts to hum-run, you take it, because what else is there to do? As you leave the cottage, the wind feels sharper. The trees bend slightly, not from the breeze, but from something older. And as you walk back toward town, realize something strange. You never asked his name, and you're not sure you want to know. The first time it happened, people thought it was the wind, an unlucky gust. They said, slamming the great oak doors of the church at Matins, just as the priest raised his hands for the opening blessing. A freak breeze, an ill-timed draft. Number 1 panicked. Not yet. But the second time, the sky was still. The trees were still. The priest's mouth had just opened to speak and slam. The doors shut again. Hard enough to rattle the stained glass by the third time. No one showed up for mass. You're not particularly religious, not in the formal sense. But in times like these, you begin to take notice of things that creak and slam and shut themselves. So, you decide to visit. The church is a great squat thing, built long before memory, and possibly before logic. Its stones are thick with moss. The bell tower leans slightly as though exhausted. Gargoyles perch above the entrance like bored dogs with better things to do. You reach for the handle. The door swings open before you touch it. Welcoming? Maybe. Cursed? Possibly convenient? Definitely inside. The air is dry and cold. Dust hangs in shafts of light like old breath. The pews are empty, though they bear the impression of decades of knees and elbows. Candles gutter in their sconces, half melted down into stubs that look more like regrets than sources of light, and the altar. It feels far away, not just in distance, but in meaning. Like a memory that stopped returning your letters. You walk the center aisle. Your footsteps echo, louder than they should. Or perhaps it's just that nothing else dares to make a sound. The priest appears, thin, robed pale as candle wax, with eyes that have seen more confessions than miracles. He nods once, as though he knew you were coming. They've stopped ringing. The bell, he says. Why? He looks up at the rafters, because no one comes when it calls. You glance at the choir loft. Empty. A bird's nest has taken the prime spot once reserved for the organist. They say the church is... Turning inward, he continues. You ask what that means. He shrugs. It prays for itself now. You try not to look alarmed. He leads you down the nave, past cracked icons and saints with worn-out faces. At the back, near a door that won't open anymore, there's a basin of holy water. The surface is dust. Someone has carved a crude cross in it with their finger. Below it, a faint outline of ... something else. Not quite letters, not quite symbols. You dip a finger in the basin. The dust sticks. The priest watches you. The sick don't come anymore, he says. Not even for last rites. Why not? You ask, they say, if you die here now, the soul stays. Can't find the door. Doesn't elaborate. You take a seat in one of the pews, just for a moment. The wood is hard, but familiar. Outside, the sky is dimming to that soft violet of late afternoon. You try to think of something comforting, but all you can focus on is how quiet it is. Too quiet. A wind rises. Only inside the doors. Yes, those same doors swing shut behind you, with a tired groan and a heavy thud. You rise. The priest does not. Don't worry, he says. It just likes to be alone sometimes. Who? He smiles. The kind of smile you wish you could unsee. Historians still debate the role of churches during outbreaks. Some offered sanctuary. Others closed their doors out of fear. A few became mass graves in disguise, but in all cases, the lines between the sacred and the infected blurred. The cloth between salvation and superstition was thinning, increasingly stained. You thank the priest. He doesn't follow you out. The doors open. On their own again. Gentle this time. Like a sigh. You step back into the open air. The wind touches your face like a question. You don't answer. And as you walk away, you don't look back. Not because you're brave, but because something about that church feels like it's still watching. You first hear about him from a baker's apprentice with a twitch in one eye and a nervous laugh that never quite lands where it should. The rat man says, stuffing crusty loaves into a wicker basket. He feeds them, talks to them, even. Got a whole army of him, they say. You ask if he's seen him? The apprentice just nods and bites his lip hard enough to bleed. So of course you go looking. It's always the same in these towns. The more people fear a thing, the less willing they are to name it properly, and the more likely you are to find it behind the fish market, which is exactly where you end up. The alley smells like salt, vinegar, and a lifetime of discarded bones. You tread carefully. Rats scatter in every direction, but they don't squeal. They don't panic. They just move as if rearranging themselves, and then you see him a shape, half man, half ragpile, hunched between two crates of spoiled cabbages. He's feeding something. From his palm, scurries away, tail curled like a question mark. He doesn't look up. You shouldn't be here, he says. You point out that you've already arrived. He chuckles, deep and rattling. Curiosity and plague make a fine stew. His face is older than the town, you suspect, or maybe just more weathered. His beard is full of crumbs, and possibly a few tenants, eyes though clear, sharp, too sharp for someone who spends most of his time talking to rodents. You ask about the rats. They're messengers, he says, and scavengers, and survivors.
How they know the way through the walls?
They know where death sits and where it's paused for tea. You try to decide if he's mad or merely correct. He pulls a scrap of parchment from his sleeve. It's chewed at the edges, stained, but there are markings, lines, dots, scribbled symbols that dance somewhere between map and prophecy. They told me where to draw it, he says. Where to avoid, where not to step when the moon is crooked. Ask if it works. He grins. I'm still here, aren't I? You can't argue with that. As he speaks, the rats emerge. Quietly. 1, then 5, then dozens. They move without frenzy, without fear. Form a loose circle around the man like a furry congregation. One climbs his shoulder and rests there, flicking its tail lazily. He doesn't flinch. Historians still debate the role rats played in spreading the plague. The theory of flu-infested black rats as the primary vector has fallen in and out of favor. But in medieval towns, rats were more than pests. They were omens, companions, scapegoats, and, to some, familiars. Do they talk, you ask? Not with mouths, he replies. But yes. You sit, why not? He offers you a crust of bread, which a rat immediately steals. He doesn't mind. They don't lie, he says. Not like people, not like priests or merchants. They just live. They just know. You nod slowly. A rat sniffs your boot, decides you're boring, moves on, and for a moment you feel oddly safe. Not clean, not comfortable, but watched over in a peculiar whiskered way. The rat man leans close, his voice a whisper. They say the next wave comes from the sky, not wind, not rain. Something, else you ask who they are. He points to a nearby rat. She's seen it. Of course, you leave shortly after, unsure whether you've gained wisdom or a new phobia. But as you walk back through the alley, the rats part for you.
Add in
Fear. Incourtesy. Which is somehow worse. You don't tell anyone what you saw, not because they won't believe you, but because part of you now thinks it was meant only for you. And as you close your door that night, you hear the faintest of squeaks outside your window. not scratching, just watching. There's a shop near the bridge that doesn't sell bread or wine or anything a person actually needs to stay alive. And yet no one dares break its windows. No one steals from its shelves. No one even seems to look at it too long. It is the mask maker's shop, and tonight, for reasons even you can't fully explain, you find yourself standing in front of it. The wooden sign above the door is cracked and faded, etched with a single symbol, a long curved beak. The kind of mark that makes the back of your neck itch a little. The windows are fogged from the inside. A flicker of candlelight pulses behind the glass like a watchful. You knock once. The door opens before you finish the second tap. A boy stands. They're perhaps no older than 12. Dressed in an apron, smudged with charcoal and beeswax. His eyes are quiet, as if someone had taken most of the fear out of him early. "My father's in the back," he says, "but I can help." Inside, it smells of glue, leather, smoke, and something like cloves. Shelves line the walls, stacked with masks, plague masks, mostly. Long beaks, hollow eyes. Each one slightly different. Some smooth, polished, others cracked and stitched like they've seen things and didn't like them. You ask if they're for sale? The boy shrugs. "We don't charge anymore. People just come." You ask if he's ever worn one. He hesitates, then nods. "Only once. You." Don't ask what happened. At the back of the shop, a curtain sways, but no one comes out. The boy leads you to a table. Laid out before you are mask components, straps, buckles, scraps of linen, tiny metal filters, and dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, angelica root. You're surprised how much thought goes into something that looks like a bird preparing to rob a bank. He picks up a leather beak and begins to work. Small hands, methodical, practiced, no wasted motion, no small talk. Eventually he breaks the silence. "My brother caught the plague," he says softly. "We buried him in the orchard." You offer a quiet condolence. "I think the masks work," he says, not looking up. "But not in the way people think." You tilt your head. They make people brave. They give the illusion of control, and that keeps people from panicking and panic. Panic spreads things faster than fleas. It's hard to argue. He fits the beak into place and stitches the seam with careful fingers. Historians still debate the effectiveness of medieval plague masks. The long beak, often filled with aromatic herbs, was meant to protect physicians from bad air miasma. While the true cause of plague wasn't airborne in the way they believed, the masks may have offered some minor protection, if only by reminding people to keep their distance. You ask if his father is truly still in the back. The boy doesn't.
Answer.
A draft brushes past. The curtain flutters again. Finally, he lifts the finished mask and holds it out to you. "For you," he says, "if you want it." You hesitate. The eye holes stare back, blank and unreadable. The beak curves downward, like a question mark with too many answers. You take it. It feels heavier than it looks. As you step outside, the wind has picked up. The town feels quieter, not empty, but holding its breath. You glance back. The boy is still watching you from the doorway. Candle flickers. Behind him, the masks on the walls seem to turn ever so slightly in your direction. You nod your thanks. He nods in return, and then he closes the door. It doesn't make a sound. They say the sound began on a Thursday. A soft, rhythmic tolling, faint, distant. Like a bell rung under water or memory. You hear it first while tending to your tiny garden. A sorry little patch of earth growing more weeds than vegetables. You pause, spade halfway buried in the soil, ears perked toward the wind. There it is again, dawn and NG, soft, slow, like time exhaling. You stand, brush the dirt from your hands. And listen, no birdsong, no footsteps, just the bell. You ask your neighbor later if he heard it. The old man squints at you through a thatch of gray eyebrows and says, "The steeple's empty. Has been for weeks." You ask around. No one will admit it directly, but you notice the glances people, pausing at odd moments, looking up at the Sky as if expecting some celestial timekeeper to appear. Mothers shush their children in the street more quickly than before. Market voices don't rise quite as high. The bell tolls again that evening. Clearer this time. You set out to follow it. Not far. It's beyond the square and up the hill, past the millstones. There's a chapel. They're abandoned, overgrown. Spire tilts like a candle that's melted too long. Ivy snakes through the broken windows. No one has prayed there since the last bishop coughed his lungs into a silk cloth and was carried out feet first. And yet, from within, ... your hand touches. The splintered door, it creaks open without resistance. Dust dances in the light from a broken window. Damn smells like damp stone and dried herbs. There's no rope, no mechanism, no one inside, just a bell hanging motionless above your head. You stare at it. It stares back metaphorically. And then, with no warning, it rings again. You don't move. You don't scream. But your heart does something you haven't felt in weeks. It quickens. And maybe listens. You leave without understanding. But you leave. With the certainty that you were not the first to hear it. And you will not be the last. Historians still debate the meaning of bells during plague years. Some towns rang them to announce deaths. Others told them to mark curfews, prayers, or ghost processions. There are tales of bells that rang themselves of. Hollow steeples sounding alarms no one confessed to ringing. Fear has a resonance. And sometimes, so does memory. Later at home, the sound still echoes in your chest. You lie awake, staring at the rafters above your bed. Dan NNG. Faint, distant. You do not sleep. That night, not because of fear, but because part of you is still listening. You spot her on the road just as the sky begins to bruise with twilight. She's hunched but swift, her steps sure on the uneven earth. A long cloak hangs from her shoulders like shadow-draped wings, and around her waist, dozens of tiny pouches sway with each stride. A basket swings from one hand, and in the other, almost absurdly, walking stick shaped like a twisted branch. She looks like someone who's walked between worlds and come back with interesting gossip. You only meant to cut through the orchard before sunset. But the moment she lifts her head and meets your gaze, your direction changes. You don't know why, but suddenly, you're following her. No one taught you how to survive this plague, but something about her walk, her silence, tells you she knows a thing or two. She doesn't invite you, not exactly. But when she stops beneath a crooked tree and begins laying out small bundles of dried plants on a flattened stone, you somehow know you're allowed to stay. She speaks without looking at you. Fever root, she says, untying a bundle. Not that it cures the rot, mind you, but it cools the fire in the chest. You nod as if this is familiar knowledge. This one? She lifts a dull green stem, brittle as parchment. Mouse-ear hawkweed keeps the coughing quiet, especially useful when you're hiding. She pauses, then glances sideways, which we all are now in one way or another. There's something about her that unsettles you. Not fear, more like recognition. Like meeting an older version of a part of yourself you haven't lived into yet. She pours a dark resin into a wooden bowl. The smell is thick, earthy, almost bitter. You breathe it in, and your mind drifts, as if your thoughts are feathers suddenly caught in a breeze. People forget, she says, that the land was never clean. Not really. Before streets, before brick. We learned to live with dirt, with rot, with the breath of the forest, not the words of the priest. She touches your wrist just lightly. You're afraid. You don't respond. She hums softly and crushes some leaves between her fingers, releasing a fragrance like lemon and dust. Good, she whispers. Fear keeps your eyes open. Historians still debate the actual medical knowledge of medieval herbalists. Some were condemned as witches. Others hired by nobles. Their treatments were a mix of superstition, trial-landerer, and inherited folk wisdom. Some probably saved lives. Others, well, not so much. You stay until the last of the light fades from the sky. When she stands to leave, you realize she's left something in your hand. Small linen pouch tied with a red thread. You don't. Open it. Not yet. She disappears into the dusk without a word. You never see her again. But that night, you sleep with the pouch under your pillow, and your dreams are strange, yes, but also quiet. You see it from the corner of your eye. Small, brown, fast. At first, you think it's a bird maybe, or a fallen leaf carried by the wind. But then it darts again, across the alley just ahead of your boots, dragging something with it. Crust of bread. You stop, not because you fear the rat, but because you now know, without doubt, that this is how it starts. The priests talk of sin, physicians of humors, the barbers of divine punishment. But the rat, small and quick and unassuming, says nothing. It simply carries its crumb, innocent of its role in this great and terrible theater. You watch it slip into a crack in the wall, tail flicking like a question mark. You've seen more rats lately at night, at midday, places you didn't expect beneath. Pews, behind barrels, across rooftops like little thieves with soft feet. Once, you thought them harmless. Now they make your stomach twist with something older than fear. Something like knowing. The cat population, once fat and sassy, has dwindled. No one knows why. Some whisper that cats carry evil spirits. Others say they were eaten in the early days of famine, when meat became a theory more than a memory. But with the cats gone, the rats thrive. You see one again the next day. This one larger, bolder. It stares at you from the mouth of a drain. Doesn't even flinch when you clap your hands. After a long, shared silence, does it finally slip away. Historians now understand that fleas, riding on the backs of black rats, were the true vectors of plague. But at the time, few suspected these humble, whiskered things. They were just part of the background noise like dust, or bad smells, or hunger. But not to you. Not anymore. You start to notice the places they like, the corners of bakeries, the alley behind the tanner's shed, the gaps between barrels in the wine cellar. You start avoiding those places. Not out of superstition, out of pattern. One evening, while breaking apart a dry crust of bread, you find a tiny footprint pressed into the dough before it was baked. 3 tiny toes, barely visible, signature of sorts. You burn the loaf. No. One asks why. They wouldn't understand. Later that night, while the fire crackles low, you lay awake and listen. A soft skittering sound travels across the floorboards, and then silence. And then, perp. Not a rat, a flea. You sit up slowly. You are not sick. Not yet. But you are listening. You are learning. And every scratch, every flutter of shadow becomes another signal in the quiet war. You're walking alone, against something you can't see. You light a candle and sleep with it. Burning, it won't keep the plague away, but it might keep you company. You wake before. The rooster crows. Not because you meant to, because of the wheels. Wooden, heavy, groaning under weight. They creak like old bones, pulled slow across the cobbled street. You hear them from your palate, where the chill of morning has yet to be softened by fire. Cart. Low, unhurried. You don't look out the window. You already know. You've seen it before once from a distance. Another time, far too close. It's a driver. Wears a hood. Sometimes a mask shaped like a bird's beak. Though this one no longer has the patience for pageantry. This one rides barefaced, lips pale, hands steady on the reins. The horse walks as if it knows. Knows not to rush. Knows the weight. It pulls isn't meant for haste. Knows that dignity, even for the dead, requires rhythm. You crack the shutters. Mist clings to the stones like breath held in suspense. The cart halts outside your neighbor's home. A man steps out, silent. He and the driver exchange no words. There. Are rules here unspoken? Ones, you do not cry out, you do not call names, you do not reach for the dead. They lift the bundle together. The shape is small, too small. You press your hand to the window frame, fingers splayed as if to hold something. In place, it does not work. The cart groans again, resumes its slow passage. One more stop, then another, then gone. Down the lane, out through the gate, toward the mass pit by the old vineyard, where the earth is more grave than garden now. Historians still debate how many truly died in each village. Records were sparse, mass graves undocumented. Some towns lost half their population, others more. Cart became a symbol, yes, but also a daily fact. It did not knock. It did not announce. It simply came, and then left. Emptier by midday. The street looks unchanged. Children chase each other past the spot. A woman pours water from a bucket. A chicken flaps its wings. But you remember you always do. And that night, as you light your candle, you place a pebble on your windowsill. You don't know why. Only that it feels right. A small stone. For a small soul. Gone before the rooster ever had a chance. The bell doesn't ring today. That's the first thing you notice. No low, sonorous clang rolling over the rooftops. No flutter of pigeons startled. From the steeple, just absence. You pull on your cloak and walk to the edge of the village square. Past shuttered shops and crooked stalls draped in fading linen. The chapel door, usually left ajar, is closed. No incense in the air, no hymn bleeding faintly into the cold. You knock. There is no answer. You knock again. Still nothing then. You press gently, and the door creaks open. Inside, the shadows are thick. The air still. Dust hangs like lazy snowfall in the shafts of morning light slipping through the stained glass. You step cautiously onto the stone floor, and there he is. Not collapsed or fevered, just sitting. On the last pew, back straight, head bowed the priest. You almost greet him, but something about the way he clutches. The crucifix tells you this is not a moment for words. You sit down a few feet away. The silence feels too sacred to disturb. Minutes pass, maybe longer then. Softly he speaks without lifting his head. I've buried 20 this week. His voice is cracked parchment, dry and brittle. 20 names. 20 rights. 20 souls passed into the hands of a God I can barely feel anymore. He doesn't cry. Priests don't cry, but he exhales, slow, trembling. Like a man confessing to the walls, he tells you he used to be certain. About sin, about penance, about purpose. He used to believe that sermons could change hearts, and that prayer could hold back the storm. Now, he just reads the rites. Mechanically, softly, like casting spells he no longer believes in. Historians still debate the psychological toll the plague took on clergy. Some turned zealot, others turned away. Some stood stoically by the dying, others fled. The faith did not vanish, but it frayed, like wool left too long in the rain. The priest finally looks at you. His eyes are sunken but kind. Keep lighting your candle, he says, even if no one watches. You nod, you stand, you leave. That night, back in your own cottage. You open the window and look at the chapel. No bell, no hymn, just a glow. A flicker of candlelight. Still there, still trying. You used to love the market. It was noisy, yes chaotic, and sticky and full of squawking hens and argumentative fishmongers, but it pulsed with life. The scents, the colors, the crush of people elbowing for apples or arguing over the price of onions. It was the only place where everything happened at once where news arrived. Gossip flew, and bread still steamed in baskets lined with linen. Now the market is quiet too. Quiet, you step through the old archway where the vendors used to hang dried. Herbs and prayers written on scraps of sheepskin. The stalls are still there, just empty. A tipped-over basket rolls in the breeze. A chicken clucks somewhere, confused by the absence of boots and crumbs. The smell is different too. Less sweat, more mildew, fewer spices, more stillness. You walk slowly between the stalls, your footsteps, the only sound. A dog watches you from. Beneath an overturned table, tail tucked, ribs visible, toss it a sliver of dried meat. It doesn't move, just stares. Even the pigeons seem uneasy today. You pause where the baker's cart used to stand, trying to summon the scent of warm rye and honey crust. You remember his laugh, his flour-covered hands, the way he always gave an extra roll to children who didn't ask. He's gone now. No one ever saw the cart come for him. It just stopped arriving. There's a theory, still debated, that marketplaces became ghost towns not just from death, but from the living giving up. That fear suffocated commerce more thoroughly than infection ever could. That even the healthy stopped showing up, as if the act of buying carrots had become indecent in the face of so much grief. You find a small wooden token left on one of the stalls, a child's toy, maybe a carved duck with one missing wing. You hold it for a while, then, without knowing why, you place it carefully in the middle of the empty table and step back. Somehow, it looks right there, like an offering, like a reminder, like proof that someone still walks here. Even if it's just you, you move on, slow as shadow, down the center of the square, and though no one speaks, feel watched by echoes, by memories, by a world that once laughed, here and may one day again. You find the parchment in a drawer beneath the table. It's been there for months, folded neatly next to a bit of twine and a dry sprig of lavender. The ink is still good, quill still sharp. There's no one left to receive a letter. Still, your hand begins to write, "Dear Anselm, if you are alive, I hope this finds you." The words come slowly, not because you don't know what to say, but because your heart keeps hesitating between hope and history. Anselm, your brother, your friend, your impossible optimist, had set off weeks before the sickness reached your village. Headed north, chasing rumors of work and grain, you never heard from him again, and still, you write the act of putting words. Page feels sacred now. A defiance, a refusal to let memory rot with the bodies. You describe the silence in the chapel, the empty bakery, the priest's slumped shoulders. You mention the rats, the dreams, the candle you keep lighting even. Though wax grows harder to find, you pause. Then I still have your old scarf. It smells like wood smoke. It's the kind of sentence no chronicler of great events would include, but it's the sort of sentence that matters. Historians have uncovered countless plague letters, most unsent, many unfinished, scrawled prayers. To God, farewells to family, rambling thoughts from people who never considered themselves poets, but became them in desperation. There's scholarly debate over how accurate they are, whether some were altered later to make stories prettier. But the emotions, the longing, those feel painfully real. You finish your letter, fold it, address it. You do not seal it. You do not take it to a courier. There are no couriers anymore. You simply place it on the wind. Let the wind decide. That. Evening, you see a young girl skipping stones outside the abandoned cobbler's shop. She's humming something tuneless. Her dress is too large. Her hair is tangled. She sees the letter, picks it up, looks at you. You nod once. She tucks it in too. A basket, and disappears around the corner. Maybe she'll read it. Maybe she'll burn. Maybe she'll carry it north, unknowingly, in the folds of her threadbare skirt. You don't care. You wrote it. And for a moment, that's enough. The garden still grows. It's behind the apothecary's cottage, hidden behind a leaning fence. Woven with brittle vines, the door to the shop itself has long been barred shut-nailed from the inside by someone with more fear than hope, but the garden somehow lives on. You push the gate gently, sighs open. Inside, the herbs greet you with unexpected color. Marigold, rue, rosemary, poppies, swaying like sleepy blood drops in the breeze. Even now in the season's tail, they bloom, as if they've forgotten to be afraid. You walk slowly between the narrow beds. Labels on wooden stakes remain, though the ink is blurred. Feverfew, Valerian, Angelica. Names that sound like spells, or saints. You kneel by a patch of wormwood, bitter, healing, dangerous in the wrong hands. The apothecary had once spoken of it with reverence, as if every leaf held a story. She used to speak to the plants as she worked. Some say she was touched, others say wise. It's often the same thing, really. She disappeared 2 fortnights ago. No cart came, no grave was dug, it's vanished. Some say she walked into the woods to seek stronger roots. Others whisper she dissolved into her tinctures, as if alchemy finally consumed its mistress. Historians remain uncertain whether herbalists of the time were more helpful or harmful. Some prepared poultices that soothed pain, others peddled false cures, powdered emeralds, crushed beetles, oil of brick. Medicine and magic held hands often back then, and neither knew quite where the other ended. You gather a few sprigs lavender for calm. Time for courage, mugwort for dreams. You wrap them in a strip of cloth and tuck it into your satchel. Not because you think it will save you, but because it feels like remembering. You notice a small bench beneath a crooked tree. You sit, close your eyes. Let the scents take you somewhere quieter, and for a moment, just a flicker, you feel the apothecary near. A whisper in the wind, a rustle in the thyme, nothing dramatic, just presence. Then it's gone, but the calm lingers. When you rise, you leave behind a pebble. Smooth, flat, warm from your palm, the garden accepts it without question. As it accepts everything, the well is older than anything else. Older than the chapel, older than the market. Older, maybe, than the road that brought people here in the first place. It sits in the center of the village like a stone heart ringed in moss and echo. You've drawn water from it hundreds of times, sometimes laughing, sometimes thirsty, sometimes bored. But now, you approach it with a strange reverence. It has become something else. Not just a well, a mirror, a measure of who's still here. You grip the rope, slowly lower the bucket, hear the splash far below. The creaking of the pulley sounds louder. Now that the birds have gone quiet, you haul up the water. It's cold, clear, without scent. You touch it with your fingers, and then you pause. There's a ribbon tied to the handle, blue silk. It's faded with fraying edges. You know who tied it, or who used to? She was the one who left flowers here on feast days, who sang to herself while fetching water, who sometimes wore bells on her ankles for no reason except that it made. Children giggle. You haven't seen her in a week. Your hand tightens. You don't cry. The well doesn't want tears today. Instead,
Ow.
You untie the ribbon, press it to your lips. Then tie it back again gently, like tucking in a child. Historians have long debated the symbolic significance of wells during plague years. Some became shrines. Others were blamed, accused of spreading the sickness, of harboring demons, of being poisoned by strangers. Some were sealed.
Ow.
Some were blessed. This one remains. You sit beside it now. Watch your reflection ripple and settle. Your face looks older, not in years, in story, the kind of age you carry in your chest. A villager walks past you. Nods. You nod back. Neither of you speaks. But the shared glance says everything. You're still here. So is the well, and the sky despite. Everything remains wide. The town at night is a different creature. Gone are the familiar noises, the clang of pails, the murmur of markets, the occasional crow of a stubborn rooster. In their place, the breath of the wind, the soft groan of timber shifting in old beams, and the faint clatter of something unseen scurrying over cobblestone. You have volunteered for night watch again, not because there's much to guard. Most of the town is quiet, the doors bolted, sick asleep or past saving, but because sleep no longer comes easily. So you walk, lantern in one hand, stick in the other. Your shadow flickers ahead of you, long-limbed, stretched like a ghost that's grown weary of haunting. The watchtower is abandoned. You pass it anyway. Its steps creak under your boots, but you don't climb. You simply lay a hand on its post, like greeting an old friend, too tired to rise. Down the alley near the weaver's shop, something rattles. You pause. A cat. Just a cat. Too thin. Too quick. Too smart for death. You wish it good hunting. At the far edge of town, you stop by the forge. No fire now. Just cold iron tools hanging like forgotten limbs from hooks on soot-dark walls. Once this place rang like a cathedral. Now it is a tomb of stillness. You sit on the old bench where the smith used to eat his bread with blackened fingers. You eat yours now, quietly. Dry crust and dried apple. It's not much, but it keeps the ghosts at bay. Some historians describe night watches during the plague as acts of futility. Others call them rituals of resilience. The difference, it seems, depends on whether you're writing from safety or walking the streets with nothing but a lantern and hope. Your footsteps. You tense. Then relax. It's the boy from the east. Cottage, carrying his own lantern. You nod, he nods. No words exchanged, just the warm flicker of two small flames in the dark. You walk together now, not because you need to, but because people weren't made for solitude. Not really. And in the quiet, between you, the world feels a little less lost. You patrol the empty streets till dawn draws a silver edge around the rooftops, and when the bell still doesn't ring, you light a new candle anyway, just in case someone wakes up and needs to find their way home. It sits in the chapel window. It's tucked behind a sheet of cloudy glass streaked with dust and rain. One single flame. Small, quiet. In defiance of everything, no one remembers who first lit it. Some say it was the priest back before his voice turned, hoarse from too many funerals. Others say it was the midwife, as a prayer for the babies that stopped crying in their sleep. Others, quietest of all, whispered that no one lit it at all, that it lit itself. You stand before it now. The chapel is mostly empty. Just a few wooden benches, worn smooth by grief and habit. The smell of wax and old straw, silence so deep, you can hear your own pulse in your ears. You light a second candle and place it beside the first. It's what people do now, a ritual without rules. Some bring offerings, a button, a ribbon, a single dried plum. Others just stand for a while, then leave. The candle always remains. Somehow, even when the wax burns down, even when the wind howls through the cracks, even when the chapel door hangs crooked on its hinges, historians still puzzle over the persistence of spiritual practice during the plague. Why did so many cling to rituals of strange ones when answers failed? Some argue it was control. Others say comfort. A few, perhaps too honest for the textbooks, admit they simply don't know. You kneel not to pray exactly, but to rest, and to listen to the soft pop of melting wax, to the whisper of something not quite words, is carried on a draft through the rafters. You reach out and steady the flickering flame with your palm cupped around it. It glows warmly. Gently, you remember the stories of saints who carried fire in their hands without burning. You're not a saint, just someone trying to survive still. The candle does not scorch you. It simply lights your face. A few moments later, you rise and walk back into the street. Behind you, the candle glows on, its flame dancing like a heartbeat, or maybe a promise that not everything dies, not everything you. Wouldn't expect to find fear in a chair, but here it is. The barber's shop stands just off the main lane, half timberbird, lopsided, smelling faintly of vinegar and dried herbs. Its sin, carved with a razor and a coiled leech, still creaks above the door. You step inside. The chair waits for you in the center of the room. Polished wood with cracked red leather, stained in places you don't want to look at too long, clings to the jar of combs on a small shelf beside the mirror. Shears, thread, a bowl, a rusty lancet. You sit. Why not? The barber is going to vanished weeks ago, but old habits remain. Your reflection stares back at you, hollow eyes, sunken cheek, hair wilder than you remember. You look like someone who used to laugh. In the drawer beneath the counter, you find a small cloth pouch. You open it. Inside, 2 dried leeches, a sprig of mint, a tiny scroll listing prices for bloodletting. You chuckle softly. Once people came here for health. They believed a little bloodletting could balance the humors, ease the fever, cure the madness. Some came just to have someone touch them, talk to them, tell them they weren't beyond saving. Historians agree that barbers during the plague often doubled as amateur physicians. It was practical, terrifying, but practical. They cut hair, drained veins, pulled teeth, and whispered comfort in the same breath. You remember sitting in this chair once as a child. Your father held your hand. The barber told you to be brave. He told you it wouldn't hurt much. You believed him. You You close the drawer. Wipe the dust from the mirror with your sleeve and rise. You're not sure why you came. Maybe just to sit somewhere, people. Just to talk. To see yourself. To remember as you leave. You straighten the chair. Just a little, as if someone might need it soon. Outside, the wind tugs at your coat. You tighten it around you and keep walking. The world keeps shrinking. But these old places, the candlelit chapel, the ghostly garden, the barber's chair somehow make it feel less empty. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to go on it. Hangs in the tower, still, heavy with silence. For years it called people to prayer, to market, to safety. Its toll could be heard from the far fields, across hedgerows and muddy roads. When it rang, children stopped their play. Old men raised their heads. Dogs pricked up their ears. It was the sound of rhythm, of order, of belonging. But now the bell does not ring. You climb the steps slowly, each footfall a creak, a groan, a whisper from the bones of the building. The rope lies coiled like a sleeping serpent on the floor, untouched for weeks, months. You've lost track of time in the soup of dust and grief. The clapper sways faintly in the breeze from a broken window. You place your hand on the rope, pause, and let go. You're not here to ring it, just to remember it. During plague years, some towns forbade the bell from being rung afraid. It would spread panic or signal death too often. In others, it rang hourly like a heartbeat trying not to stop. Historians still argue about which was more merciful. You walk to the edge of the tower, where the stone ledge holds the wind like a deep breath. From here, you can see the entire town. It looks smaller than you remember. Some roofs have caved in. Some doors are ajar, swinging slowly. A thin trail of smoke curls from one chimney, a lone survivor's signal. Birds nest in the rafters of the abandoned mill. A red cloth flutters from a shutter, marking plague within. You rest your elbows on the stone and just ... stay. For a while below, cart rumbles slowly by. One man driving, 2 sacks in the back. You don't look too closely. The bell remains still. Behind you, you wonder what it would sound like now. Would it sound the same? Would it echo? Would it be heard? Or has silence filled the ears of this town so fully that nothing could cut through it? You reach out one last time and touch the bell's side, cool and movie. Solid, you whisper something to it, not even a full prayer, just a syllable. Then you descend and leave the bell to its silence. Like so many things, it waits not for death, but for someone to begin again. She's the last one on her lane. The others, neighbors, friends, rivals are gone now. Some buried, some vanished behind shuttered doors, but she remains, bent, silent, wrapped in a brown wool shawl that's seen too many winters, and she plants parsley. You pass her every few days during your rounds. And she's always there stooped, low in the tiny strip of earth outside her door, patch no wider than a wagon plank, soil like gray powder, and still she works it, hands gnarled, but precise, seeds tucked into neat rows like prayers. No one asks her to keep planting, she just does. Some days she talks to herself, some days to the plants. Sometimes you think to the people who used. To live across the street, time didn't take, she mutters once, without looking at you. But parsley's stubborn, you nod, because what else do you say to that? Once this street was a parade of daily life, children chasing chickens, women trading gossip, laundry strung between windows like flags. Now it's a corridor of silence, except for her and the parsley. Historians have long noted the curious tendency of plague survivors to return to ordinary tasks. Planting, sweeping, mending socks. Was it denial? Ritual? A slow reclaiming of life? No one ever is. No one ever will. You kneel beside her today, not to help, just to sit. She doesn't speak. You don't. Either the air smells of damp earth and faint rosemary from a broken pot near. Her steps. Blackbird hops along the edge of her garden, hopeful. She tosses it a crumb from her pocket without breaking rhythm. She pauses only once. Looks at you, eyes sharp beneath a brow like a drawn curtain. You're still here. Almost surprised. "So are you," you reply. She snorts. "For now." Then returns to the soil. You sit a while longer. Long enough to feel the warmth of the ground creep through your boots. Long enough to hear the wind push dust gently along the stones. Long enough to believe that maybe parsley will bloom again. And maybe if it does, someone will be here to taste it. Even if it's not you. Even if it's not her. Even if it's just the blackbird. In the back corner of your cottage, beneath a broken shelf, lies a small wooden box. You almost forget it's there. Until one day, when the wind rattles the window just so, and a loosened beam creaks like someone calling your name. You rise, stretch, and reach into the shadows, your fingers brushing its familiar edge. You pull it out. The lid is warped. The iron clasp rusted. It opens anyway. Inside, letters, dozens. Some yellowed, others nearly crisp with age. Folded carefully, sealed with wax or thread, or even just the hope that someone, someday, might read them. You wrote them, all of them. 2 people will never read them. To the brother who left for the coast before the sickness came, to the baker's daughter who once smiled at you across the market stall, to the priest who disappeared mid-sermon, to your mother, long dead before the plague but always nearby in your thoughts. You unfold one at random. It begins simply. Today I helped bury the tailor's wife. She always hemmed my sleeves too short. Another starts with a memory. Remember when we watched the stars from the barn roof, tried to count them, and you laughed? Another is just a single sentence. I hope there's bread where you are. Historians rarely mention these letters that no one receives. Notes tucked into prayer books, slipped under doorways, left on graves. There's no record of them, no scholarly consensus. But you know they existed. You know they mattered. You. Run your fingers over the handwriting yours, but from a version of yourself you barely. Remember? One filled with more questions than fear. You don't read them all. Just enough to remember who you were when you wrote them. Then, gently. No. You tie the stack with fraying twine. Not to send, not to keep. Just to honor. You place the box on the table, beside a bowl of apples no one will finish. And for a while, you simply sit, not speaking, not crying, just listening to the sound of rain on the roof, as if the town itself were whispering back. It's the last house at the edge of town, past the burned smithy, past the overgrown well, beyond the road where wagons no longer pass. You've walked this path before, though it never had a purpose, just dust, stones, and an ache in your ankles by the time you arrive. Today, you stop at the door. It's not your house, but it feels like one you knew once, the kind that always smelled faintly of broth and beeswax, the kind where someone used to sing while they stirred stew, where boots lined up beside the hearth like sleeping dogs, where love wasn't grand, but it was there, quiet and warm. You knock, no one answers. Of course not. You try the latch. It opens. The room inside is still. A few motes of dust float like tiny stars. A single chair is tucked beside a table. Cup remains half full, half empty. An open book lies face down, spine gently cracked, its last page waiting, and by the hearth, a basket with yarn in it, red and yellow thread, tangled slightly as if someone left mid-stitch, intending to return. You cross the room carefully. The floorboards creak like old memories. Your fingertips trail across the table's surface. The cup's rim is cold. The book smells faintly of lavender and smoke. You sit and you wait, not for someone, but for stillness to settle in your bones, for your breath to slow to the rhythm of the room, for the house to accept you in the way only empty houses can. No one speaks, and yet everything here speaks. The fire that once burned, the chair worn smooth, the blanket folded with care, left on the cot. This isn't survival anymore. This is what comes after. A hush, a pause, a single soft promise that the world somehow didn't end. That despite everything, despite everyone, someone walked through this storm, found a place to rest. You lean back in the chair, close your eyes. The wind sighs through the cracks in the wall. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls. Or maybe that's just the ache in your chest. The door, slightly ajar. Creaks, but it doesn't close. It never does. And now, dear listener, let your eyes grow heavy. The streets of the medieval town have quieted. The ash has settled. The shutters have been drawn closed, and the last candle flickers in a corner window. You've walked the full length of the day through dirt and silence, memory and meaning. You've passed the healer's herbs and the barber's chair, sat beside a widow with her parsley patch, watched the bell that would not ring, found a letter that no one would read. Yet somehow you were here, still walking, still listening, still surviving. Even as the world unraveled around you, even as time stitched itself slowly back together, somewhere in that imagined village, a new loaf of bread rises. A blackbird sings. Someone sneezes and isn't afraid. A child draws chalk pictures on the wall. And a few brave souls begin to open shutters again. There will be more days, more dust, more steps, but not tonight. Tonight, you've earned your rest, so let your breathing grow slower. Let the weight in your shoulders ease. Let the gentle hum of time wrap around you like wool. Because here, in this quiet place, you are safe, you are remembered, and you are not alone. Sleep well, traveler of time. We'll see you in the next story. Good night.